Hi, welcome to Vongelette's YouTube channel. Today we'll be covering the lats, or the latissimus dorsi. They may be contributing to your anterior pelvic tilt posture and to an internally rotated posture like this. If you hold a pen or pencil in your hand, it should be pointed forward when you're relaxed standing. It shouldn't be pointed inward like this. Lats gets you out of APT and internal rotation of the shoulders. Our first assessment is raising our arms overhead to see if we can get to 170 degrees, which I'm demonstrating, or beyond. Our second assessment is assessing our pelvic alignment to make sure that when we raise our arms overhead, we can use the abdominals to maintain our pelvic stability, or basically keep the pelvis in the same position. I'm not a fan of when people raise up their arms overhead and they go into an anterior pelvic tilt. That doesn't necessarily mean that your lats are stiffer than your abdominals, but we need to actively try to use the abdominals. So in this case, if I'm trying to use my abdominals and I see this though, then that means I know the lats are stiffer than the abdominals, and that's going to be a different correction than if I had limited range of motion overhead, which I do not. So I'm demonstrating good range of motion overhead, but in this picture I do not have good range of motion. However, my stability in my pelvis is okay, so that's something I'm not worried about and I don't need to concentrate on. But we will correct the limited range of motion with the arms overhead. And in this last example, we have the arms being limited, which we will need to correct, and we have the pelvis going into a major anterior pelvic tilt, which if I were to try to use my abdominals and I couldn't offset this, that means my lats would be stiffer than my abdominals, and we need to correct both. Now this is a picture of the intro scene, and if you use a pen in your hand and the pen points towards your other hand, you are internally rotated, and one culprit of that are the lats. The other culprits could be a pec, which you may need to stretch, and or making sure your external rotators or rotator cuff muscles are activated and sufficiently strong. Now this is a good example where if you had limited length of the lats, but your stiffness was not a factor, or you could maintain your pelvic position, this is a great exercise, because what the lats do is they help extend the arm, but they help also extend the spine, basically in the lumbar area and even in the thoracic area. So one way that we can help stretch those lats is rounding that back and putting the arms overhead. And I like going into a crouched position because a lot of the fibers in the posterior chain of fascia connects all of that, the lats and different muscles of the posterior chain together, so we can get a greater stretch going into that crouched position. So this is Matt, client, business partner, awesome massage therapist, and he's demonstrating some side lateral flexion of the lat, which you can really what he's getting is some distraction and essentially getting a much greater pulling force than when I was in that crouched position. So for those of you who might have one arm, for example, that went a lot farther in the original assessments than the other, this is a great way to target one side over the other, and he's pointing to where you want to feel this, and then you'll also probably feel it in the back as well. And the other thing too that I like what Matt's doing is he's flexing his knee, and he's kind of putting himself into a little bit of hip flexion, which is going to stretch out and round his back a little bit. And this is a great example where I'm flattening my back, so I'm concentrating on improving the stiffness of my abdominals, and I'm making sure that I can get into a full range of motion. So if you had stiff length of your lats and you had compromised pelvic stability, this one is a great exercise for you. And this is a progression that you can use then. I'm keeping my back flat, I'm doing a dead bug, I'm keeping my arms overhead, which stretches my lats. And I apologize for that ringtone. My client is just coming in and we're wrapping up in perfect time. So if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. Thank you.